Paint and sip, we're going to go through watercolor painting today. I've got my materials out here. This is a Strathmore watercolor 9x12 pad. You can see here this is the brand. And I've just taped out the area of my painting. This is a 6x8 area, I believe. Yeah, so this is a 6x8 area on the painting. And this is just what fits in the camera. You can use whatever size that you feel comfortable with. My watercolor paints are Winsor & Newton watercolor paints. This is just what I use normally, what I'm comfortable with, but whatever you have is fine. And then my paint brushes are Princeton Neptune brushes. If you've been here before, you've heard me say this many times, but I love these brushes. I've had them for probably almost 2 years now, and they've held up really well. So all of my art supply recommendations are in the link in my bio. There's a tab called art supply recommendations, so that's everything, not just this stuff, but everything that I use and would recommend at lots of different price points. Okay, so I've got my paper taped out here. This is optional, but I like to do it for the border. And the first thing that we need to do is put a little drop of water in each one of our watercolor paints. Again, if you've been here before, you know that this is what we do to start. This just helps to start to dissolve our watercolor paint so that we can use it. And while I'm doing this as well, just generally, my speech that I do before this is to just kind of try to enjoy the process of painting. This is all just for fun. We are just here to be creative and have a little community here that likes to paint together on the weekends. So especially if you're new to art, be gentle with yourself. Try not to get too stressed about the outcome. It's just more about what we're, the process of painting. So be nice to yourself, be nice to everybody else in the comments, please. Be nice to me. I will try to block anybody who's being rude or mean, because that does happen, but we are going to try not to have that happen. So we're painting today. I don't really have a reference photo for you because the painting that I used for the picture is gone now, so I'm gonna kind of explain this. We're gonna first paint a sunset, and we're gonna do this sunset that goes from pink to purple to blue to kind of dark blue. And so those are the colors that we need to make. So we're gonna make all of those colors in our palette. Now we're gonna do something a little bit different here. I usually preach not to use white in our colors, but we're gonna do that today. So I'm gonna start with pink, and I have I'm actually gonna move this up here so you can see my color mixing. I have a magenta in my palette, so I'm gonna use that. If you don't have magenta, just use red. And I'm gonna take a little bit of magenta into my first section here. And then I'm also going to add a little bit of white to this. So whatever white your watercolor comes with, we're gonna add that. If you don't have white, that's okay. This will work perfectly fine without it. This just gives us a little bit more of a pastel look when we put this sky down. So you can see that that turned it kind of into a lighter pink color. I'll also try to get to most of the questions if I can. I can't always get to them because I do have to teach at the same time. Our next color is purple. I have a purple in my palette. If you don't, mix together some red and blue. So again, after I get the purple on there, I'm gonna wash my brush and grab some white. Put that in there too. So the reason we don't usually use white in watercolors is because the general idea of watercolors is to be able to layer on top of each other. And we do that because all of these paints are relatively translucent or transparent. White, by definition, cannot be translucent because, like, to see the paint on white paper, it has to be somewhat opaque. So normally we don't use this technique for painting, but for this situation, we're going to because it gives us kind of a cool effect. Our next color is blue. We want kind of a sky blue for this color. So I'm just mixing, oh, that got a little dark, but that's okay. I'm just mixing a few of my blues together, and then we're adding white to that as well. There you go. And then last, we want a really dark blue. And you can do this by mixing together blue and black. I have an indigo in my palette, which I'm going to use, which is a really dark blue by itself. But if you don't have one, just mix together blue and black. And then we'll add a little bit of white to that as well, just to keep it consistent across all of the colors. Okay, there we go. So there's kind of our range of colors there. this is what we'll be using for this particular sunset. So I'm going to swatch all of these. Here's my dark blue. You can see it's quite dark. Here's the lighter blue. Yes, I do like to always prepare the colors beforehand because when we paint, we want these all to blend together, which means we need to put them down on the paper pretty quickly. Otherwise they will dry and they won't blend together. So it's good to have, if you're doing a technique like this, it's good to have all of your colors prepped and ready so that you can put them all down kind of at the same time and they'll all blend together. Now, you don't need to copy my colors exactly. This is just kind of the idea of our sunset. So it's going to go like this, with this color at our horizon, and then working up towards the darker blues. Okay. So I'm going to show you kind of how I'm going to do this. I'm going to flip my paper over because I just like to work my way down instead of up. So I just turn my paper around, and we are going to start with our pink. Do like about a fourth of the paper in the pink, do the purple, fourth of paper in the purple, light blue, dark blue. So about even sections of each color. And no, we're not including yellow in this one. This is just a pink and purple sunset, which I like. It's just a little bit different. Okay, so you can watch me or you can paint along with me either way. We're starting with the yellow, or well, the pink. And again, like I said, we're just going to paint about a fourth of the way down the paper. I like to use horizontal strokes when I'm doing this. It just kind of helps me get a nice texture instead of scribbling like that. Then we're going to go into the purple. You don't really need to wash your brush in between these colors. They're all blending together on the paper anyway. And we're moving from light to dark, so we don't need to wash our brush. Okay, and then we skip to blue. So you can see when we do all of this together, these colors can kind of blend with each other. Blue, and then the dark blue. Okay. Now, once you have all of these colors down, if you feel like they've blended together nicely, then you can leave it like that. Or you can clean off your brush, dry it off a little bit, and then start at the very top again and just go back and forth the whole way down the painting like this. And this should give you a nice little blend between these colors. I would not recommend you go back up very far because these are lighter and these are darker, so then you'll bring those darker colors into the lighter areas, which is what we don't want. But feel free to do this as many times as you want. While it's still wet, you can keep blending this together. Again, I would recommend horizontal strokes while you're doing this. And I think that this is good. So I'm going to leave it alone, and we're going to let it dry. You can flip this back around. You can also tilt your painting if you'd prefer. This will kind of help those colors blend together even a little bit better. There we go. And while we're waiting for this to dry, it does have to dry all the way. So if you have a hairdryer and you'd like to use it, you can dry it now. I'm gonna kind of see how long this takes. I have a hairdryer here, but it's kind of annoying to use it while I'm on the live. But if you have any art related questions that you'd like me to answer while we're kind of waiting for this to dry, feel free to ask them in the comments and I will answer them so I can keep you entertained while we watch paint dry. Oh my gosh, we have 4.3 thousand people on here. I think that's the most I've ever had on a live. So hello everyone. I probably won't get to all the questions, so I apologize. Paint brand is Winsor & Newton. How long have you been doing watercolor for? Well, I've been painting since I was a young child, and I can't really tell you when I started using watercolor, probably when I was a kid. Favorite color? Blue. I really love this indigo color right here. Can tubes of watercolor be rehydrated like you did with these ones? Yes. And I refill these pans with tube watercolors. So you can see kind of I don't know if you can see it very well, but this color right here, the indigo, is tube watercolor that's dry now, so you can see that kind of texture. So is this one, but it's flattened out. So you can fill up your used up pans with just tube watercolor. It'll dry. You can use it just like normal watercolors. Also, I'll mention this again, all of my art supply recommendations, everything that I use and everything that I have enjoyed in the past, all different price ranges, is all linked in my bio. There's a tab in there called Art Supply Recommendations. So if you're looking for my recommendations on art supplies, I'm not going to go through all of them right now, but that's where you'll find them. Did you go to school or did you teach yourself? So I took some art classes when I was in school. You know, in high school I took AP art, and in college I was an art minor. I did that mostly to keep making time for art classes and not lose it as a hobby. I never really anticipated being a full-time artist, which I am now, which is exciting. How do you prevent overworking the paper? That is just practice for sure. You know, that comes from overworking a lot of paintings and kind of figuring out when you hit that time. Any tips to get a pool of watercolor in the palette? I never seen people do it. Add more water than you think. Start with water. Keep adding water to it as you add paint. You won't really get a pool unless you add enough water. Favorite paper? Arches paper is probably my favorite. Also, if you're just dropping in, we're doing a painting right now. I'm just letting it dry so then we can move on to the next step. It's a sunset painting. Where can we rewatch? All of my paint and sips, so this one and all the previous ones, are uploaded to my Instagram. Same handle as TikTok. The new ones are under the Reels tab. The old ones are under the IGTV tab. Instagram has gotten rid of IGTV, so that's why there's this split. Did white go in every color? Yes, it did. What does it look like when it's done? You'll have to find out. How do you flatten the paper after you're done? You can't, like, you know, you can do a few things. You can kind of press it. You can iron it, I think, on very low temperature. But just kind of over time, it will kind of flatten out. Okay, I'm gonna see, we're still a little bit, so the pink here is still wet, so I'm gonna wait just another minute or two to let that dry. And then we'll move on to our next step. Yes, we are watching paint dry, but that's why I'm talking and entertaining you so that you're not bored. Best tips for water control? I either have too much or too little. Again, that's just practice. I really can't like tell you exactly what to do. You know, that's just kind of a feel thing. No, actually, you don't need to change your water very often. I don't, at least. I can show you. This is my favorite experiment to show you. It blows people's minds. So you can see that this water is, first of all, in a very dirty cup, but also pretty dark and blue. But when you actually take the water out of here, I'm just taking some water from this cup onto my brush. It's super, super light. Maybe it has a little bit of a blue tinge, but it really won't affect your colors all that much. Your water has to get really, really dirty for it to actually like start affecting your watercolors. So I don't generally change the water in my cup. Also, I saw a comment that said, is art a talent or are you born with it? It's definitely just a skill that you have to practice and learn. I certainly was not born knowing how to draw or paint. It definitely has taken a lot of practice, and it's just like anything else, where if you practice and you are not afraid of messing up and not afraid of failure and learning, then you will get better. So I don't know if that's comforting or not, but it is. It is what it is. Very, very few people are born as a good artist. Yes, I do use acrylic too. It's not my favorite, but I do use it. My favorite medium is probably oil paint. Okay, I'm gonna hit this with a hairdryer real quick just so that we can move on to our next step. So I apologize for the noise that's about to come from the my hairdryer lives by my art desk and not in my bathroom, and that's how you know I'm an artist. Oh no. Yes, I do like gouache. Gouache is also one of my favorites. Okay. There we go. So, the top of this painting, we've kind of done the background now. The top of this painting is going to be telephone poles with the telephone wires going by them and then birds sitting on them. So, that being said, you can kind of be creative with how you want to do this. If you want to just do one telephone pole here and the wires going different places, or two telephone poles, one smaller and one bigger to show like the perspective, you can do that too. I will show you how to do it, and then you can kind of, you know, do your own thing when it comes to that. So I'm going to use my ruler for this. I'm also going to use ink, and this is to get a really nice dark silhouette. So this is just India ink from the art store. This is like $4 for this tub. And it just gets you a really nice dark coverage as paint. If you don't have this, or if you don't want to use it, you can just use black watercolor. That is fine. You'll have to really get in there and kind of dissolve it to get a really nice dark paint, but that is totally doable. Okay, so I think I'm going to do, we actually really don't need that anymore. I think I'm going to do two telephone poles, one kind of smaller on this side and then one larger on this side. So I'm going to start over here, and I'm using my pencil. I'm going to start with this one. This one's going to go maybe like halfway up my paper or so. I'm just drawing a really skinny, you know, the telephone pole straight up the paper. There we go. Show this closer up. So there it is. We'll cap off the top, and then telephone poles usually have that bar that's horizontal going across the top. So I'll do that here. Okay. So there's that. And then usually they have like little cross supports that go down at an angle like this, diagonally. You can also look up a picture of a telephone pole if you'd prefer to work off of a picture. I've just done this before, so I'm kind of going off of my memory, but if you don't, you know, if you want to be different, that is totally fine. Okay, and then I think I'm going to make one bigger one that's up here. So for the perspective, we want the one that's closer to us to be taller and thicker than the one that's further away. And that will give the viewer the perspective that it is indeed closer. Okay, so there's that one. And again, we'll do the crossbar. If you want to be really exact about this, you can measure how long each of these is going to be, but I don't feel like doing that. Okay. Something like that. And then if you want to plan kind of where the wires are going to go, you can. I'm going to do one coming out of each end of the crossbar and then one coming out of the top of the telephone pole. And those will connect to the same spots on the other telephone pole. So this one to this one here, they kind of swoop down and then go up to rejoin. This is why we can This is why we use the pencil to kind of figure out where those go. Swoop down and then up. And again, swoop down and up. So they'll kind of cross right here. We can also do some wires that kind of go towards the middle of these poles if you want. You know, I don't know. You can be creative putting some random bars in there. Random wires, I mean. Swoop that one up like that instead. This one go down. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so once you have kind of where you want all of those things to be, we can start filling them in with our dark paint. So I'm using my ink, like I said. Be careful if you have ink, it will go everywhere. It's also difficult to open when it hasn't been opened in a while. Yes, I agree, the crossbar and the distance should be smaller. So when I paint it, I will make it smaller. There we go. This thing had glued itself together. But that's why we sketch out things, so that we can see what they're actually going to look like when we paint them, and then we can make corrections. It's either that or this one should be bigger, but we're not going to worry about that right now. Okay, so I'm using my smallest brush here. This is a little size 0 detail brush, and I'm going to use that in my ink. And we'll just start filling in. Once you have your pencil sketch down, this is kind of a relaxing part of it. Something I would recommend to you though is that sometimes we have a habit of like really trying to fix straight lines, and so we'll kind of keep adding little sections of it to make it to try and make it a perfectly straight line. And my suggestion to you is to not do that, because every time you do that you won't quite get it. You'll just be like, oh, one more little, I just need to like fix this one little part and then it'll be perfect. And then you'll fix that one little part and then there's another part that's not quite even. And then you'll make your telephone pole way wider than it should be, when you should just leave it the width that you had, you know, intended in your pencil sketch, and just leave those little slight imperfections in the straightness of the line that no one's really going to notice when they look at your painting. So no, it's 3:29 for me right now. I'm on Eastern time. So you can see there's some little parts in here that aren't perfectly straight, but that's okay. Another thing that you can do is kind of rotate your painting to be more comfortable for the hand that you use. Don't feel like you have to keep it in the same position the whole time. I find that I prefer my hand is steadiest when I'm doing downward strokes, and so I like to rotate my paper so that I'm always doing downward strokes with my paint. Okay, so here's where I'm kind of fixing that mistake of making that bar too big. There's the crossbar. There we go. So there's that one. The detail brush in my country is 4 times more expensive. Oh my. All right. Okay, now I'm gonna start filling in this one. While we're just filling these in here, I do like to mention that my Venmo is listed in my bio and my PayPal is linked in my bio. So if you're enjoying today's session and you'd like to leave me a little tip or a gift for the lesson, feel free to do that. Again, my Venmo is listed in my bio and my PayPal is linked in my bio. Tips are always appreciated, whatever amount you feel comfortable with. What are some artists that inspire you? You know, I'm not all that plugged into the art world. I really should be more plugged into the art world, but I don't know if I have a really good answer for you. I have a few on TikTok that I'm inspired by, but I don't know if I could remember their names for you right now. Someone said ruining my brush, leaving it in the cup. And I would just like to say that you sound like every art teacher that I've ever had. And I will continue to do it. I've had these brushes for 2 years. They are perfectly fine. Do you do art for a living? Yes, of course. Not of course. Yes, I do. I've been doing it full time now for since last October. So about 9 months now, I suppose. Let's see, making sure. Why did you start in the middle of the pole? So I like to, I guess I'll show you this technique as well. So for the outward edge, I like to use my brush, since I'm right-handed, I like to use my brush kind of this way so that I can get the edge nicely with the end of the brush. And if I try to get this edge, I'm using kind of the point of my brush, and I find it easier to kind of control the edge this way. So I always paint kind of from the middle and then going to the outside on the edge, and then I flip it over and then paint the other edge, if that makes sense. Is the key to more vibrant opaque colors the amount of color in the pan or the brush quality? It has to do with a fair amount of things. Sometimes it's technique. There's a certain way, like letting them dissolve in that water that you put in there for a little bit, kind of smearing it with your brush to try and get a little bit more color on there. You know, quality of the paint does help too, to a certain extent. Like, you don't need the most expensive paints, but some cheap paints definitely don't have the color saturation in the paints to get you a really nice vibrant color. Paper does help, like good paper helps. This Strathmore paper isn't very expensive, but it's decent. Stuff like that. And you'll just kind of have to experiment with the stuff that you have and whatever's in your budget to, or interest to buy. And those things will kind of help with the color saturation. Hopefully that helps. Do you always paint bookmarks, and do you sell them? Yes, I do sell bookmarks. I sell other paintings as well. I have lots of like regular full-size paintings that I sell and that I do for commissions, but bookmarks seem to be doing quite well on TikTok right now, for me at least. So that's what I've kind of gotten to be known for, at least at this point in my career. So it's good. Earns me a living, so that's nice. Top or bottom of the pole, and I started in the middle. I don't know. I just started where I wanted to. I don't think I could tell you why. Just felt like starting there. Just paint landscapes if you're bad at sketching. Well, work on it. I have a hard time with those questions because the answer is always just to practice. You can't get better if you don't practice, and there is no way to get better if you don't practice. So just try it. Don't be afraid of making bad paintings. Don't be afraid of making bad drawings. Find whatever style kind of makes you happy, and just do it a lot. And again, do not be afraid of making bad paintings. That's the reason that most people quit art, is because they feel like every painting that they make, even at the beginning when they're new to art, has to be good. And that's just simply not the case. I like to add these little kind of lumps sometimes on the sides of the telephone poles. These are kind of like the the boxes that sit underneath the crossbar of the telephone pole. So this is optional, but I do like to kind of add it. You can cover up any little mistakes that you've made like this too. You can add like little wires kind of coming up the telephone pole there too. Okay. And then once we've got that, we can do the dangerous part, which is connecting the wires to each other. And this is because you really just get one shot at this. And I would recommend that you just commit to it. If it's not a perfect little swoop, just leave it. Don't try and fix it. It will look better if it's just one little line than if you try and fix it to make the perfect arc. It'll get too thick. So again, I like to turn my paper so that I'm using this kind of motion of my wrist to get a nice curve. And then we're just gonna go for it. Go. That turned out decent. Okay, next one. It's gonna go. Okay. Go. And then this one. Okay. Thought I messed that up. There we go. There's those. And then we can make these kind of go out of the frame to connect with the next imaginary telephone poles. So give them another swoop, going off painting there. Oh, that's funny. Straighter than the child from Otherwise Mother. Oh, we love that. Okay. So there's those. Again, you can add these little extra wires if you want. Yep, you gotta keep going. Why don't you go to the edge of the page? Well, I am going to the edge of the page that I've taped out. I like to leave a little border here. It also is like what can be filmed in my tripod, so I try to keep it to what we can see. Okay, now we can leave the bottom as it is if you want, or we can add some little houses and trees down here to kind of show that we're looking up. So I like to add houses. These are just trapezoids, really. So angle, flat top, and then angle the other way. There's a house. Silhouette. Very simple one. We can do another one of those over here maybe a little bit shorter. You could put chimneys on these as well if you want. There's a little chimney. We can also do trees. So these are just going to be dots really. And we just want to form kind of the outer edge of a tree with these little dots in kind of a rough circle shape. And then fill in the middle. We can leave a few little spots where you can see through it, see the color behind. So you're just kind of roughly filling it in. Do evergreen trees here too if you want. You just fill up the bottom with whatever, however you want, however much or little as you want. Yes, we're going to do the birds on the wire last. I'm going to do a tree. Just the little top of a evergreen tree sitting in here. deciduous tree next to it. Where'd you get the notebook from? The art store. But these are also linked in my Amazon if you want to see them. Okay. So, there we have the bottom of our painting. And now we're going to paint birds. So I'll just kind of show you the general shape of the birds here with my ink, and I'll try and do this close up. So you're going to, oh, I almost knocked that whole thing over. Oh my God. Okay. So we are going to, which art store? It does not matter. Any art store will have this. Google art store in your area and it will have this. So the bird, the body shape of the bird is kind of like a comma. So you want to do like a little circle and then a little line going down. That's the tail. And then throw a little dot right on top of that. And there's your head. So again, circle, like a comma shape with a tail, and then throw a little head right on top of there. You do want these to be pretty small. Okay. Yeah, art stores are all the same. Happy little birds. Do you like using masking fluids? Not really. It makes you plan out your painting a lot more than I like to. So I like to just kind of see where the painting takes me instead of planning it all out at the beginning, but that's just me. So you can put as many birds up here as you want. I like to do kind of little groups of them sitting together. Maybe a few kind of on their own. You can also do a few flying if you want to. Those will just be little V shapes. Try to kind of differ the angle of the V so that it looks like there's a lot of them flying and they're not just the same shape. Let's put up a little backdrop of birds in there when we already see some that are sitting on the wires. Make some really small and some bigger. That helps too. There you go. Yeah, you guys are all coming up with some great ideas for what you can put in there in your own paintings. Tennis shoes, a large bird. That's all up to you. Okay, and now, once we're done, make sure your ink and or paint is dry, and you can just use an eraser to go over the top if you can still see some of those pencil lines. Again, don't do this until you're sure that the paint is dry, but you should be able to erase any of those extra pencil lines that you can still see. And that's why we do those on top of the sunset rather than first, because if we had done the sketch of those telephone poles before we painted, we would not be able to erase the pencil now because we painted over the top. Once you paint over it in watercolor, you really can't erase it all that well. So there we go. I'm going to take off the tape now, so feel free to stick around for that nice, satisfying reveal. And then my usual announcements one more time. This is Paint and Sip. I host these every Saturday. Not next Saturday, I will be out of town. but normally every Saturday. I post on my TikTok and my Instagram when those are coming up. And the recording of this will be uploaded to my Instagram, same handle as TikTok, so you can go find this one on there a little bit later today, as well as any of the previous ones. They're all uploaded on there too. My Venmo is listed in my bio, and my PayPal is linked in my bio, so if you'd like to leave me a little tip or a gift for today's session, that is always appreciated. This is a full-time job for me, so tips always help. And then my Etsy shop is on vacation right now since I'm going on vacation, but please do feel free to check that out and follow me on TikTok and Instagram. Remember, as you're taking off your tape, that you can always heat it up with a hairdryer to help it kind of dissolve the glue of the tape, and it will help it rip the paper a little bit less. Make sure to sign your painting, put the date on your painting so you can look back on it later, and the polite sass. And what else? Yeah, if you painted along with me and you have your painting, feel free to DM me on Instagram. What kind of tip we're talking? Whatever you're comfortable with. Here's our final painting. I do hope you all enjoyed this session today. I enjoy painting with all of you, and I hope you enjoyed.